Hello, I am the Awkward GM Corbin, and thank you for joining me on this ride through Scion 2nd Edition. If you're like me, you might have just picked up Scion. It was free for just a little bit, very temporary, but it was nice to be able to give it a shot, try it out, pick through it a bit. I'm still relatively new to Scion, but I'm going to try and give you the best beginner's guide I can as I'm going through the book myself. This is mainly going to be geared towards players and character creation, but it's also going to cover things like how to roll dice and things like that. I mean, of course I know how to roll dice. I got my dice. There we go. I've rolled dice. If you notice me jumping around a little bit and the video editing, that's because most of this is going to be pre-recorded so that I'm giving you an I'm removing those things. An accurate representation of Scion and its rules, because I don't want you to see me fumbling through the rule book, because that doesn't make great content sometimes. So while I'm going to be going over the PDF and character creation and all that jazz, there's going to be another me in the messages below who's going to say hi, probably around now, and let you know that if you have any questions, you can ask him. And if there's anything I get wrong, he's going to own up to it, and I don't have to own up to anything. And while I'll be going over most things, I'm not going to go over everything. You're still going to have to buy the PDF, but I'm going to give you a good general overview of character creation so that you may follow along and do it with me. And then I'm going to give some examples of my character going through and using some of their abilities and maybe even getting into combat with one of the mooks that are in the back of the book. Scion has 3 subsystems that correlate to the 3 types of attributes that you have, or the 3 arenas, physical, mental, and social. So there's action, adventure, procedurals, and intrigue, and those are the sort of gameplay elements I want to cover in this video. So now that we've got all that out of the way, let's get on with it! I just want to point out the credits here. All these people did nice work on this system, I have to say, and I'll highlight over here the special thanks. I really like reading these because it's always nice to see all the positive energy coming out of it. Now, I've sort of done a primer on Scion already on my YouTube channel, The Awkward GM. You can check it out and subscribe if you'd like. But that's just a general overview. I'm going to give you a really quick overview right now of Scion, which is basically all myths are true. The gods have existed in the past, and they still exist now, though they might not be interfering as much as they did previously. Instead, the children of the gods, known as Scions, live amongst humanity, and they get into all these crazy mythical adventures, and that's basically what you play in Scion 2e. The Book of Origin is mostly about the pre-visitation Zions, which are Zions more close to being normal mortals, but there are also rules for other supernatural paths within the book. Just to scroll down here to supernatural origins, you've got the saints, the kitsune, satyrs, a word I can barely pronounce, Theranthrope, Wolf Warrior, and Kusith. Or that might be Sousith, if I get my pronunciation correct. So scrolling down here, we're going to go to Character Creation 82. Nice picture here. I like the person in the background who's just either smoking a pipe or vaping, and the cloud is just like a giant face with a huge mustache. Awesome. So we get some pre-made characters in here. So if you don't want to make a character like me, right down and dirty, you can get here Eric Donner. So I was checking out, and Scion 2e did have a backer level where you could be used as character models for some of the character art in the book, which is awesome. Speaking of, there's also apparently a new crowdfunding for Realms of Pugmire 2e, and it'll be happening this month, so keep an eye out for it. If you know anything about the story path system, I think the first thing that is always listed for character creation is going to be step 1, concept. You figure out the basic elements of your character. I don't usually do that to begin with. Often I'll wait to flesh out my character towards the end because I'll be like, ooh, this is shiny, let me put it into my character. But we'll go with starting with the concept first this time. So being a little bit unfamiliar with how Scion actually works, I think I'm going to go with a sort of fish out of water type character. Specifically, I want to play as a mystery writer who believes they're slowly going insane. I'm probably going to adjust the character a lot more as we go through, but that's what I'm working with right now. Now, I'm going to be selecting the short-term and long-term deeds that my character are going to have. I really like this concept because essentially what it does is it gives the story guide a path or a sort of guideposts to say what I want to do as a player, and that way they can build the adventure around my goals and my aspirations. I could select the band term deed, but that's sort of like a group goal that me and the other players would choose together, and I don't really want to do that without other people involved because I don't want to overstep. It's one thing for me to want to save my family's reputation, it's another thing to put that onto other players and force them to do it with me as well. I'm going to actually shift over to my character sheet, which I got on the Mr. Gone website because it's an interactive PDF and I love having access to that. I'm going to write down here that my character is a mystery writer who is going through things. Okay, maybe not going through things. May be seeing things that aren't there. So I'm going to go over to where the deeds are, where my short-term deed is, and I think the thing I'm going to choose for a short-term goal is to uncover a truth, or a hidden truth. That way I can be in line with my character concept, which so far is only 1 or 2 sentences long. Long-term goal, I've already established it, but I feel like my character is trying to prove that they are not insane. That is a good thing to try to prove. And of course the band goal I am going to wait on, so that's going to be a TBD, to be determined. Now, I'm not familiar with paths. They're not something that I've seen in other games, but effectively from what I'm reading here, they give you access to an NPC who's sort of like an ally, and also maybe even a group that you're familiar with, and some resources that you could use because of that. It's broken down into 3 different types. You have your origin, your role, and your society or pantheon. Origin is where you came from, like your history. It doesn't have to be how you were when you were a kid, but it could be. Role is essentially your job or your current being as you are right now or right before the adventure took place. And then society and pantheon is sort of self-explanatory. It's what a supernatural group you're associated with or what god you're the child of. When I say child, you don't have to necessarily be a child. You could be an adopted child, but essentially that's how we're going with this sort of thing. Also, each of your paths are associated with 3 skills. I'll talk about this when we go over the skills section. I almost forgot. You can get a path condition that triggers when you use your path too often. Usually what this will do is make it more difficult for you to use your path, and if you use it again, it's likely to cut you off from your path temporarily until you make amends in some way. So when I was looking at the paths for Origin, they have some example ones in the book. You don't have to adhere to these. In fact, creating a path yourself is pretty simple, but I'm using these just because I'm not familiar with the world enough and I want to have a little bit of help doing this. So the one that I chose was Potemkin World. And what I found out about Potemkin is it's actually a term in real life. I mean, it's a term in the book, so it must be a term somewhere, probably. But in history, there was this guy, Potemkin, who wanted to try to impress the Empress of Russia And what he did was, in Crimea, he would set up these fake villages that he sort of would roll out and unpack and set up before she would come down and pass them. And essentially it was there to make it look like the economy was booming and all these villages were being built and stuff like that, but in actuality the area was not settled in at all. And that's where we get Potemkin World. It's essentially a fake world that your parents put you in to keep you separated from reality, or from the world as Scion knows it. So choosing this path, I'm going to get 3 of the path skills. I'm going to choose the occult, culture, and integrity ones because I feel like they're more applicable to my character. Also, there's some connections here that they give as examples, but I'm going to probably use some connection that I'm going to make up on the spot, which is essentially I'm going to have a best friend who I met in college. I'm going to be part of a study group or an alumni association. Let's say alumni, my character is a little bit older, has graduated. And let's say they still have access to the college library on campus. And specifically, the college library has an occult section underneath it that my character will use to research the occult. And for here, my path, I'm going to put Potemkin World. That way I know that I have that. I'm going to do the skill stuff later, so hold me to that. Future Corbins in the... if I scroll over here to the right under contacts, I can put my best friend forever, and I'm going to also put alumni association. I don't think there's a spot for anything that's access related here. Doesn't look like it, so I'm moving on. So there isn't a role path for writer, so I'm just going to take the detective role and change it up a bit to be more in line with the writer aspect of my characters. So instead of taking firearms and integrity or persuasion, my character is going to have academics, empathy, and persuasion. Additionally, I'm not going to give them any of the connections like an informant or something, but I am going to have sort of like this writers group that my character is a part of. Essentially, they'll be similar to the occult library, but they're more of a social group, so I'll have them give me access to people who are more knowledgeable on a subject for research help, essentially. Back to the character sheet. For context, I'm going to say writers group. Oh, and I do get a best friend from that writers group, or at least an NPC who's sort of a mentor, maybe writing mentor. And we'll leave it at that for now. We can flesh those characters out more. Additionally, my path is no longer my path for this role is going to be the writer. Also, if you don't know who Theo is, this is Theo. He's my shoulder hedgehog. Sadly, he is not going to stay for the entire video because that's just a little bit too much balancing for that. I went looking for the pantheons, and they're actually in the back of the book along with the supernatural paths. In this case, you can see that I am looking at the Irish gods, and they come pre-set up with 2 asset skills, which are culture and close combat. My guess from this is that if you want to add a 3rd skill, you can do it based on what god you choose as your godparent. So the particular god that I wanted to choose was Dawn, the Lord of Death, not Lord of the Dance. Sadly, I don't know why I couldn't pick that, but death is fine. This is a show about death. I mean, no, that's Beetlejuice. So what I get for picking Lord of the Dead is I get the callings of either Leader, Liminal, or Trickster, because I'm going to be playing a pre-visitation Scion, which means I might not even know that Dawn's my real godparent. Oh, so the 3rd skill I'm going to choose is going to be Sneak, because the deity I'm choosing has darkness as one of their purviews, and it seems sort of thematic. So I'm going to write down here that my next path is going to be that of Dawn, Lord of the Dead. You didn't see that. Now, I do still get connections, even though I don't know that Dawn is my godparent. Although I might know, I just might not have been visited by him. So I was going through some of the lore in the book before, and if you go into the Boston section, they talk about the she, or the fae, or the fairy folk, or the fair folk, or however you want to call them. They have a million names now, just by being so popular now in pop culture, urban fantasy, and all that. The big thing I think my character is going to have is, I'm going to say that they have some sort of connection to a mafia-esque group of fae, probably some sort of dealers in a she or fairy underground black market. And my character is going to have a fairy godmother as their contact in this group. And the reason I say fairy godmother is specifically for the pun of, oh yes, you're in the mafia and the person that you talk to is the godfather, or the godmother in this case. There's probably a series of books that have actually done this, so I am not going to say anything more about that. Oh yes, Fae Mafia. Now, as before, I said that there were 3 callings that I could choose from: Leader, Liminal, and Trickster. Leader didn't really fit my character archetype. Trickster didn't either, and so by, of course, going through that, I decided that Liminal probably is the one I want to go with, but let's go into a little bit about what Liminals are. I don't want to accidentally show you the entire page of callings, but basically the gist of what I'm getting from Liminals are that they are caretakers or traversers of various realities. Like, they're sort of on the edge or the border between 2 worlds. I should note that a lot of this I'm making assumptions about the world, but honestly, I think those assumptions are something that if I talk to a story guide, that they'll be able to help me flesh out this character a bit more. Maybe the story guide would say to me, hey, we don't have fairy mafia in my setting, and I said, is it something you're interested in looking into and adding to your setting? And if they say no, I'll say, okay, I'll adjust my character type accordingly. One of the first things that they teach you in any creative field, like especially writing, or in the case for me, it was game design, they always, people who have been around in the field for a long time will say, always keep in mind that you probably should kill your babies. As in, you should probably kill any idea that you are attached to the extent that it hurts your own project. For role-playing games in particular, sometimes I find that a character concept might work for certain storytellers or story guides, but they won't work for all of them. So maybe I have a character concept that I really like, but in the group that I'm currently in, it doesn't really fit the aesthetic, it doesn't fit where the campaign is aiming to go. Needless to say, if a story guide came up to me and said there was something wrong with my character and that wouldn't fit in their campaign, I'd probably make adjustments. I probably want to stick to the core concept as much as possible, but if they don't like that, I'm probably going to make a new character and see what works for that campaign. That also being said, if you're a story guide or a game master, don't be afraid to try one of your players' ideas out and seeing where it leads, because sometimes it leads to some interesting places that you'd never think of before. Getting back on track, we're going to be talking about skills, and in this case we're going to be talking about how the roles, the paths that we just chose, origin role and the pantheon, how those skills that are associated with those are now given their dots, the score value that each of these skills are going to have. So now that we've chosen our paths, the game wants us to rank which one we think most is associated with our character. This will determine which of our skills get the most skill points in, or skill dots rather. So for instance, if I go with the writer for my main primary path, my academics, my empathy, and my persuasion will all get 3 skill dots each. Additionally, they will also get specialties associated with them because they're at 3 skill dots, and if you have a 3 skill dot skill, you're going to get a specialty with it, associated with it. For academics, let's say I'm going to go with unsolved murders of history. Empathy, I'm going to go with detect lies. And with persuasion, I'll go with deal making because I'm dealing with the fairy mafia now for some reason. And it's sort of, now that I've said that out loud, it does sound a little bit out of character for this insane person to have an association with a criminal organization of fairies. But you know what? I'm just going to roll with it. It's something that I chose at character creation, and if it becomes an issue later on, I'll fix that. Additionally, I don't know. I kind of like the idea. Maybe it would work better with a different character. Just having a little trouble here selecting my skills. There we go. And for academics, that one is going to be the specialty of unsolved murders. And then for empathy, it is going to be detecting lies. Honestly, empathy, detecting lies, those go hand in hand for me. I don't think I've ever had a character who's had a specialty in an empathy type skill and not done that. And then deal making. That seems good for specialties. And now for my secondary, I'm going to choose my pantheon, which I'm going to give myself 2 dots in stealth, culture, and close combat. Oh, there is no stealth. Interesting. Okay. I guess it's going to have to be subterfuge then. I apologize. I'm always used to there being a stealth or a sneak skill. I guess subterfuge is that for this game. So culture and close combat. So 2 dots in that. This is my secondary for using my pantheon as my secondary. So 2 in close combat, 2 in culture. Now, you might have remembered I said earlier that you could take, you could actually have multiple skills associated, or the same skill associated with multiple paths. I'm not sure if I cut that in the editing process. Future Corbin might be able to shed some light on that. I don't know at the moment. But basically, my origin, which is going to be my tertiary role, only gives me 1 additional dot in some skills, and one of those is giving me an additional dot in culture. So culture goes up to 3. So now I have a 3 in culture, and I'm gonna say Irish culture, just because my character is associated with an Irish god, so it makes sense. So as you can see, if you do have crossover, you can increase your skill dots that way. There is a recommendation in there to not have more than 2 paths overlap. I believe the reason for that is they don't want a skill dot to go above 5. So if you have a primary and a secondary that have a crossover on a skill dot, that makes sense. But as soon as you do a tertiary that also crosses over, that would give you 6 in that skill, and it only goes up to 5. So far, I imagine that there's a way to increase them above 5. I don't know. I'm still learning the system, and I apologize. In any case, I do have 1 more dot for my origin, so I'm going to choose, or not, one more dot, but I have 2 more skills that get 1 more dot, the occult and integrity. So integrity gets 1, and occult. So if you're like me and you probably haven't ever thought of using integrity as a skill, I just brought up that section of the book to show you. Integrity reflects the emotional fortitude against outside influence or to resist leadership or persuasion. So it's basically your way of resisting someone trying to persuade you in an argument or to affect your mind in any way. So if you're familiar with the storyteller system for Chronicles of Darkness, you'll be familiar with this part as well. The Scion's 9 attributes are divided across 3 arenas, which are physical, mental, and social. So all the attributes start with 1 already, and you get to distribute across your 3 arenas in a primary, secondary, and tertiary fashion as well. Essentially, your primary arenas, such as either like social or mental or physical, the top tier one will get to distribute 6 dots across that one, and then 4 dots for the secondary one, and for the tertiary dot, you only get 2. I'm actually going to do mine across the board, primary, secondary, and tertiary with social. For primary and mental, I'm going to set my intellect to 4. I am a smart cookie. And then I'm going to have my cunning set to 3, and then my resolve 2. This is something I found myself realizing about me when I make my characters, is that I typically undervalue the resistance section of the attributes. Don't know why, it just sort of happens like that. Maybe it's because I'm thinking of what cool dice pools I can get, and you don't usually roll dice pools for stamina and resolve and composure. Anyway, so my second one is going to be the physical, and so I'm going to set myself up with 2 might, 3 dexterity, and 2 stamina. So as you can see here, the primary I've put 6 dots into for a grand total of 9, and here I've put 4 for a grand total of 7, and then I get 2 dots for social. Social, I'm going to just give myself 2 dots in presence and 2 dots in composure. So for attributes, you get your favored approach, and I am going to fix that. So what happens is Scions have what is called a favored approach, and the approaches are over here on the left section, power, finesse, and resistance. And so at character creation, you get to add 2 dots to any of the attributes within your favored approach. Mine's going to be finesse, and I'm going to increase my cunning by 1, and I'm going to increase my... Should I increase the manipulation or dexterity? I'm going to go with dexterity because it's always good to have a little bit of that extra physical push. And cunning is a mental stat, so that'll help me there. My cunning's already 3. Oh, it didn't... There we go. 4. So I have 4 in cunning, 4 in dexterity now, which is awesome. I have very high attributes, and I'm loving it. And of course, I noticed a big mistake here, which is I didn't put my patron in the right spot, and I didn't put my pantheon here, which I would just say Irish. And so I copied and pasted the pantheon so that I can put down Tuatha De Danann. I apologize. Speech was not my best subject in school. I apologize for butchering pronunciations. I really do. I wish I knew this like the back of my hand, but pronunciations is just a blind spot I have. So I chose the liminal because they seem to govern boundaries, transitions, and thresholds. And I had the idea that maybe they're sort of governing the boundary between the Fey world and the underworld. I'm not sure if the Fey world is separate, but maybe it's just to keep fairies out of the underworld. And I don't know why they would be in there, but maybe it's something that they don't want to be in there, but something's putting them there. And so I'm actually helping them get out of there when they don't want to be there. I don't know. It's something to bring up with this story guide who doesn't exist yet. So I've already gone through the liminal knacks, and none of them were really speaking to me, except for this one. Neither the minute nor the hour. You make an intimidating prediction about the details of your target's inevitable death. And so you make your opposing skill roll, your knack skill roll, and if you're successful, the target suffers a -1 to all of their actions for the rest of the scene, which seems pretty potent and seems very in line with a character whose main aspect is hallucinations. Or at least main character trait is about them having hallucinations and trying to fix that. Now, I was hoping to find something that was a little bit more like visions of the future, but I believe that is a different calling, sadly, and my character doesn't have that. Not to say that they couldn't have that in the future after their visitation when they can probably select another calling. I believe that's a thing that can happen. Someone mentioned it on one of the servers I was asking questions to. So hopefully that's correct and I am not making something up. If I am, ridicule me in the comments and future Corbin will have to deal with that consequence. So now that that's all said and done, I am going to go over to my next here. Just write down that one. It is neither the minute nor the time. Oh, nor the hour. Damn it. Or the hour. Okay, so I think I've got most of the character sheet done here. My defensive roll. So these are this right here are the final touches to the character that I need to do. I don't have stamina 3 or higher, which means that I don't get an extra bruise. I do, however, know that my defense roll is going to be a 2. Because my stamina is 2, and stamina is often used for defense. It doesn't have to be, but it's often one of these bottom 3 resistance attributes that are used for calculating defense, so I'm just going to put 2 there. And now my movement. Okay, I have... movement is based off of your athletics and your dexterity. I don't have that. Oh god, I just realized there's a thing that I forgot. There were some time travel shenanigans where I went backwards and recorded myself fixing the attributes. So now I have a 4 in dexterity. So I have nothing in athletics, but I do have 4 in dexterity, which means my movement dice is going to be 4. I have no experience, so I'm just going to put that at 0. I don't know how to mark off health in this. I guess like that means I have those, and if I do take an injury, I can mark off here on the right or so. Oh no, these are dice. Maybe I'll just have to say I'm bruised here or something. If you know how I'm supposed to mark them off on this character sheet, please let me know. First time I'm doing this, and first time I'm using a health tracker that looks like this. Maybe there was a game back in the past that I played in a one-shot that used something similar like this. It's an interesting system, and it definitely makes it feel like more of a narrative game and less of something that might be like a war game, which is good. I always fluctuate between war games and narrative games, and I don't really have a single preference. It's usually like what time of day it is or something, or what I'm in the mood for. So now you might have realized that I've been playing this character, or at least I've been creating this character without really going much into actually like their history. Like I've come up with concepts, but I haven't really flesh them out into an actual character. Now I'll write down here that this character is pre-visitation Scion. Chronicle is to be determined. Player is Corbin. And the name of my character, her name is going to be Kendra Jones. She is a mystery novel writer who dropped out of graduate school when she began seeing shadow creatures out of the corners of her eyes. And then through some initial investigation into her affliction, she ran across the She, who, while not helpful at all in alleviating the affliction, did give her access to black market potions that she got into, that she used and tried to use to help numb the pain, but she became a little bit addicted, maybe. And she's got a best friend whose name is Heidi, who's probably the best friend from the university, the librarian at the university. You know what? I'll try and keep her writing mentor is going to be named Gwendolyn. She is I don't know, she's probably into writing historical fiction or something like that, or maybe sci-fi thrillers. That would be awesome. That would be like, actually, you know what? I would say Kendra is a mystery writer and Gwendolyn is a thriller writer. That just seems like a good pairing. And then I'll say that her fairy godmother's name is Petra, and Petra probably's got something like, probably got deep connections into the city, into the black market goings on. She's probably the head of the mafia, or maybe not the head of it so much as just like one of the lieutenants that's in this city, that's running the operation within the city, and who reports to a bigger boss or something. So what do you think about my character so far? What do you think of Kendra Jones? Let me know in the messages below. Future Corbin is there and he can appreciate them, or just sort of like, I don't know, say hi. So this is something I didn't think of until I just was thinking of it. I'm gonna create a Roll20 game right here using the Scion 2nd edition rule set, and I'm going to just say I'm ready. I'm going to create a game, and this way I can show you how the dice rolling works here. Right now this is just a blank canvas. I am going to block access to my camera and mic. So I'm on the tail end of the Onyx Path Twitch stream schedule, but I'd like to support some of the other people who are streaming as well. We've got the Story Path Showcase Trinity Continuum Adventure. We've got the Mummy the Curse Oceans of Eternity, which I love Mummy. I'm going to check that out. Changeling the Lost Viva Las Vegas, which is awesome. And of course there's a lot of video content right now on Realms of Pugmire 2e that's coming out. I believe there is a Kickstarter pre-show on Tuesday, or a Kickstarter countdown, I'm sorry. And of course you can catch a lot of those previous streams on their YouTube channel, on the Onyx Path YouTube channel. Oh, and on January 27th is going to be the Onyx Path game night on their Discord server. There should be a link around somewhere that you can join it. So I've just filled out the character sheet with the skills and the attributes here so that I can show you how dice rolls work. I'm gonna say let's select the attribute of dexterity, add the skill of subterfuge for a skill roll. And let's just roll it out. It's going to be a stealth roll. Ooh, okay. We've got results. And you can see here in the right that I've got 2 successes. I rolled 7 dice and got a 110, 1 1, and a 9. The 1 did not remove any of my successes. Only things that counted were the 10 and the 9 as far as success went. If I had an enhancement, I could add on to these successes that I rolled, but so far, looks good. This is what a basic dice roll is. I just decided to zoom in here so that you could actually see what I meant. If you highlight over the two, it will give you information on each die you rolled and whether or not they were a success or a failure. Oh, and scratch earlier what I said when I said that I rolled 7 dice. What I meant to say is I rolled 6 dice, and when I rolled a 10, I got the 10 again trick, which meant that basically 10s explode. You get an extra die added to the pool if you roll a 10. And I rolled that extra die, and I got either a 4 or 5, depending on how that extra die got added. So it took some time, but I did manage to get a failure on this intelligence plus occult roll. Intellect plus occult. I'm just so used to saying intelligence. Essentially, I rolled 0 successes, but I didn't get a single one, so it's not a botched or critical failure on this roll. What does that mean? It means I can take what is known as a consolation. Now, in this intelligence plus occult roll, I am trying to intellect plus occult roll. I am trying to identify, let's say, a magic item. I failed, but maybe now with this consolation, a new character has entered the scene who might know a little bit more about this magic item. Or perhaps there's a clue on the magic item that helps me figure out what it's supposed to do. I just need to roll a different roll in order to figure it out. Or even more so, I could maybe have I know just a little trick with the magic item that isn't what it's supposed to do normally, but it will give me a +1 enhancement bonus for a future roll. Maybe I uncovered some sort of arcane secret on this magic item that I could use for a future occult roll on something else. Now, if you do botch, instead of getting 1 momentum, you gain 3 momentum. And the story guide can actually say, for instance, if you just failed a roll, the story guide might say, hey, do you want to make that a botch? And if you do, I'll give you the momentum, but something terrible happens in the scene. Now, let's say this was a botched roll. I got a 1. What do I get in return? Oh, I get momentum. Momentum is a resource that you can use on future rolls to get successes. For consolations, I could also add momentum. Momentum is essentially a resource that I can use to add dice to a dice pool, allow my character to have more time to do more complex actions, and also activate knacks. So it's a very good thing to have, and failures and critical failures even generate momentum. So let's try out my character here. Now, I do have a close combat skill, and I believe I can use dexterity for close combat. There's nothing saying that I can't use dexterity, so I'm going to roll with it. The example they give in the book is might plus close combat, but I'm going to go with dexterity because maybe my character is a little bit more agile. So I rolled 1 success, and I have this character up here, the professional, who has a defense of 2, so this attack is going to miss. My character is not that strong. They only have a dice pool of about 5 right now. If I look here, hover over that, it is... yeah, it's about 5. It's about 5. It looks like I did roll a 10, but didn't get any successes. Oh, it's 6. I got 6 dice, and I got 1 exploding, but sadly that didn't work. I'm just going to roll it again, see if it works. There we go. We got 3 successes. So what does the... oh, I got like 3 10s in a row. This is awesome. Okay, so we've got... I did a close combat attack against the professional up here. I've got 3 successes, which means I am 1 above the successes that I need to hit him. And now I'm going to go into explaining close combat stunts. This is what your character can do in combat in order to injure an opponent. These aren't all the stunts that you can do with close combat. This is just the first half of it. So the first thing I want to do is, can I deal damage to my opponent? I can. If you land a successful hit, even if you have no successes, you can deal an injury condition to your target so long as your number of successes is above the opponent's armor. I'll have to double check what their armor is. Doesn't appear to be that they have armor, so I'm going to be able to do 1 injury to their health, which is going to be awesome. It's going to put them down to half health. And now I am going to check out what other stunts I can do. So I have 1 success, so that means I could probably blind my target or break up a grapple. I think breaking up a grapple requires that you're already in a grapple, so that's not going to happen. So I might just go with blinding. My target is going to take an increased difficulty of 1 on all shoot and throw attacks on their next action, which would be great if the opponent is not melee built, if the opponent is using a gun or something like a crossbow. One cool trick with Roll20 is if you hover over something like this, a roll that you previously did, it'll tell you what exactly to type in order to roll in the command prompt. So you can go down here, or in the text field down here. So roll, curly bracket. I'm trying to roll the primary dice pool of the villain character right now to injure my character. I'm going to do a exclamation point, curly bracket, greater than 8, and if I hit roll, I'm gonna get 2 successes to hit my character. Now let's say the professional was using a gun. That means instead of needing to get 1 to hit my character, which is their default defense, the professional needed 2. Well, the professional got their 2 successes, which means they succeed, but they do not they don't get any more additional successes. So all they can do is they can inflict damage to me, which isn't great, but it's just 1 point of damage, or 1 tracker on the damage. I think I get hit with bruised. Yeah, I get hit with bruised. It's my turn again. I'm going to just roll some dexterity and hopefully just kill this guy outright. I got the 2 successes, and that's all I needed to take this guy down. And now his health goes from 1 to 0, and I succeed. That professional is now taken out of action, and that's how combat works in the game, as far as I can tell. It seems pretty easy. It can be a little bit complicated with the stunts, but once you've done it a couple times, I think you'll get the hang of it. I'm not going to show you the stunts for every attack, but I will talk about the stunts for the close combat attacks. So we've got inflict damage, blinding, breaking up a grapple, scoring a critical hit, which gives you an additional injury condition to your target. So instead of doing 1 damage, I would have just flat out killed the professional. Then you have disarm, which allows you to use your weapon to take out a weapon or item in your opponent's hand. You can also use additional successes to knock it out a farther distance. There's establishing a grapple. There's fainting. If you you generate an enhancement for an ally's oncoming attack. That's pretty cool. You can knock an opponent or trip them to cause them to go prone. I could have done that. That one didn't cost too many successes. There's also seize, which is you take an object from your opponent's hand. You can shove your opponent to push them back a couple of meters. And you can sunder, which is you use your weapon to attack your opponent's weapons. Those are all pretty good, I think. I think the stunt system it's a lot of stuff that you can do, but it all makes sense within the realm of just a single close combat attack. And of course, you're not a real game system unless you have a crazy amount of grapple rules. And I've got to say, this game system doesn't have a crazy amount of grapple rules. They're all on one page. So ranged attacks seem to have fewer stunts than close combat, but the stunts that they do have seem pretty cool. There's one that's they have similar ones to the ones that close combat have, such as they have a trip one that they can do. They have a disarm one, but they also have something called emptying a clip, which gives an additional bonus. And then they have pin, which applies a complication to an opponent's next attack. So if you're getting shot at and being pinned down and you decide to try and shoot back, you might actually get injured because you didn't get enough successes to beat the complication. Oh, look at me. I'm talking about this, all the stunts, and I'm getting excited about it. Okay, I'm gonna move on to another type of action that can happen in game. So if I were to go into the chases, essentially what we'd be looking at here is my character trying to outrun this character, and we'll say that this character's secondary dice pool is what they're using to roll this chase. They're good at shooting, but they're not good at running. We'll say that. So first up, Kendra is going to try and run away. Got one success. And now I'm going to roll for for the other guy. Oop, there we go. So their dice pool is no longer 7. It is going to be 5. So they got one success as well. It's a tie. Normally what I would do during ties is I would probably just say either re-roll or nothing happens. It's just sort of a stalemate now as you both are running through the streets. Now we try again. One success. 3 successes. So now that the professional has succeeded at the roll, they can probably do what is known as a snatch and grab, which is a stunt. So now that I've got 3 successes here with the professional, we're going to say the professional one was able to tackle Kendra. And that's it for chases. Like, seriously, it's just, this is what you do. It's a simple roll. There are a few modifiers that you can add to it, such as if your character gets a head start, that would count as an enhancement bonus. There's some hazards, maybe. Those could be considered complications. And there's such a snatch and grab stunt, which allows you to acquire a piece of equipment that you can use to help give you an enhancement in a future roll. Let's say Kendra is running from this person and they're going through some rough terrain. We'll say that maybe let's say it's a volcano. There's some dangerous pockets of lava that are around. And then we'll say that is there. Let's say that the pockets of lava are very far apart, but there could be some minor injuries caused if you have a complication. So let's say Kendra is trying to outrun the professional again. 0 successes, and it was a botch. There was a 1 in that pool, so that means Kendra's gonna fail the roll. Not only that, but she can only take momentum. So she'll get 3 momentums because it was a botch. But also, she failed with a level of a complication. Now, if you fail a level of a complication, do you still take the injury? I don't think you do. So no, it does not cause a complication. Complications only occur if you roll a success but don't beat the complication. So if I roll again and I get just 1 success, just 1 success like that, she didn't beat the complication 2, which means she's probably going to take an injury. And if I look at the level of complications, a level 2 complication can result in conditions such as the injury condition. So Kendra has now taken a point of health again. So she has gone from bruised to injured to now maimed. If she Oh, she didn't get maimed. She just is injured. Sorry, I got ahead of myself a little. So Kendra failed the roll, succeeded in the roll, which means she went across a pit of lava, but she hurt herself and burnt herself while doing so, causing that injury. So there, we've covered so far combat and chases. So now we're gonna move to procedurals. So in this regard, procedurals are essentially just skill checks of another name. There are leads and clues, which are the necessary information for information gathering. In this case, for instance, if we wanted to research something, we might choose to do intellect plus academics. So I roll that. I got 3 successes on my 7 dice. And now I can use the 3 successes that I just rolled on clue stunts. So the clue stunts can give me an extra clue that's not related to the skill I just rolled. So if I rolled intellect academics, maybe instead of it being an academic clue, it's an occult clue that I found. Maybe there was a bit of scrap paper in that book that is about an occult creature. There's interpretation, which is the GM gives me a little bit more insight into what is happening. I can ask the GM, or the story guide rather, a question related to the clue, and they'll have to answer me back and tell me if the answer would be irrelevant or a red herring, which is awesome because that can sometimes bog down mysteries. And then the last one here is player inspiration, which is the player can add additional information onto the clue, but the story guide must approve of that. So, for instance, if I say, oh, the murderer was left-handed, but the story guide didn't think the murderer was left-handed, there's actually right-handed clues all around, well, suddenly you have to rejigger your story to match what the player said. So instead of doing that, you just say, sorry, you can't say that. However, because of that, I will say you found a clue instead that says that the murderer is right-handed. Now, there are rules here for running a complex investigation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the idea here is that instead of saying, you are at a crime scene, what are you picking up and looking at, or something like that, instead you're saying, okay, there's an investigation into this murder, how are you guys going to investigate this? And my character might say, okay, I'm going to scour through the dumpster behind this person's house. I would roll probably something along the lines of a cunning plus, I don't know, subterfuge, I guess. Maybe something a little bit different than that. Maybe survival, because I'm a little bit of a garbage panda or trash panda. In that case, though, I would roll that, and my GM, my story guide would tell me what I get from it, but then they'll ask, okay, what are you doing? And someone else says, well, I'm going to start interviewing the suspect. It says, well, you have to wait a day to interview the suspect, so we'll tick the clock forward on the investigation a day, and you abstract the investigation over the course of multiple days, maybe even a week or a month, depending on your game. That way you don't have this weird sort of like it's cinematic, but it can be a little bit weird for everything of importance to happen the day of the crime or the day after the crime. And that's something I get into a little bit when I run games where my players are like, okay, we need to track down the murderer, and it's like, well, the murderer took place like a couple hours ago, and they're like, well, the murderer is nearby, we're gonna roll for initiative and then go through all the clues and try and track down the person before they get too far away. And I'm like, my plan was for you guys to like do the investigation here for a bit, go to sleep, and then pick up the investigation in the morning. I wasn't planning for all of this to happen in a single night. that would be a little bit on me, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say here. Future Corbin, he understands, he knows. Right. Future Corbin. Sorry to put you on the spot there. There's some rules for crafting here. I'm not going to go too much into detail about them because, one, I'm not much of a crafter myself. Essentially, you get to choose... You have a goal for what you want to create, and you have a tier that it's set at. A tier 1 item is a mortal item. It could be mundane, or it could be something with a little bit of an extra kick, maybe. No, it just says mundane here. So tier 2 is where you start getting lesser mystical tools, as it says. Tier 3 is you get your demigod ones, and tier 4 are your divine legendary relics. And the examples that they have for crafting are that you can create something that gives you an enhancement on a roll, or something to resolve a complication, such as preparing a lavish feast to impress a delegation of giants. That's kind of cool. So crafting isn't just to craft magic items or items in general. Awesome. So each tier of item needs a milestone, which is basically an ingredient or some technique that to be performed in order for the item to be created. Additionally, you can have, if you don't have the tools or materials or design, those would count as milestones as well, additional milestones. Let's see, what else here? You don't actually roll for the completing the milestones, or at least you don't have to explicitly roll. A quest to find adamantium or something so that you can use it to make a very powerful sword. That's maybe you just have to go to the shop and pay for it, or maybe you have to complete a quest to be given an ingot of adamantium. Okay, let's just put some artwork up here for now so that I can go over the intrigue system. So looking at the influence rules, it looks like influence is a simple roll where 2 characters roll off. One character rolls a dice pool, and the other character rolls a dice pool to set the difficulty, or at least that seems to be what it's saying here. Either character exerting influence or to the target's opposed difficulty roll. So the target's attitude can change, can act as an enhancement to either party's roll. So if they're friendly to you, that enhancement goes to you, but if they dislike you, that enhancement goes to them. Common complications are something like leaving behind hard feelings or a third party noticing. That's pretty standard stuff. So like information gathering before, influence can just be a simple dice roll and not have to do anything else. But it could be a complex action, such as what information gathering had, where you have to make multiple rolls in order to generate more milestones or hit more milestones. Actually, I think the milestones were in crafting, but essentially you're trying to convince this person to do something, and you need to wear away at their resolve, their dislike of being convinced by you, essentially. Oh, so here's where the dice pool is for blocking influence. So essentially it says here that you're going to, in order to defend against the roll, your character is going to roll integrity plus composure in an opposed difficulty. So I guess that means it sets the difficulty that the other player or other character needs to beat. So here's an additional thing that you might not know about the game. Bonds. So for instance, if you have a deep connection with another player character or another character in general, you may form a bond. This could be a lasting friendship, a fierce rivalry, or even true love. So what these bonds do is they sort of act as a pool of successes. Essentially, when you roll and your bond is helping or in some way affecting this roll, you can sort of dip into the bond and use that connection to increase your rolls. So an example that they have here is actually, I don't see an example here. I'd say maybe it's something along the lines of you both are searching for someone in the woods. So you're rolling, let's say, a cunning plus survival check. One of you decides that they're going to roll and the other one's going to assist. Instead of both of you rolling, one of you rolls and you can apply the pooled up bond bonus to your roll. Essentially, the bond bonus becomes a enhancement to the roll. So if you roll at least one success and you then you spend one of your bond points, that one success is now considered 2 successes. And that's sort of how these things work, as far as I can tell. Remember, this is the first time I'm reading some of these rules. I might be getting stuff wrong. Please correct me in the messages below. That's my call to action. That's been my call to action this entire video. If I make mistakes, call me out. Shame future Corbin. But don't shame him. He's a nice guy. Probably. I don't know what I'm going to be doing in the future, so grain of salt. And that's how you build a Scion 2e character, and also a little bit of how to how to do dice rolls and things like that. I hope that the Roll20 bit I tossed in here helps you a lot. Honestly, I wasn't thinking of doing that. I actually had a dice tray right here that my wife lovingly got off of a store online, and I had filled it with D10s, but sadly I don't think I can record. I don't have enough cameras to record both my dice and my face, so I apologize for that. Now I'm fiddling with the dice and making all this noise that I'm probably going to have to edit out, but I'm not going to, because as I'm recording this for you guys at home, or driving or what have you, be careful with that. As I'm talking right now, I'm realizing that there's a lot of stuff that I have in these segments that maybe there's a little bit of dead air that I'm going to edit out, but also some of the segments have been pretty cut and dry, very clean. This one probably not so much, but I definitely think that future Corbin's going to be a little bit lazy towards the end of this, and he is not going to edit out these dead spots. Are you future Corbin? I'm looking at you. I can see you. Well, in my mind's eye, I'm going to be you in the future. That's how time travel works. I did not see rules for time travel in this PDF. Don't know why there would be rules for time travel. You never know, though. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a good one, and I hope you have a good character by the end. You had a good character created by the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching.